For the INFJ, betrayal trauma doesn't just break trust. It shakes the foundation of their emotional world. INFJs are loyal, honest, and deeply committed. When they let someone into their life, it's not just casual, it's personal. They give their heart slowly but fully, and when that trust is broken, the pain runs deep. Betrayal trauma happens when someone the INFJ trusted turns out to be dishonest, disloyal, or emotionally unsafe. It could be a partner, a friend, a family member, or even someone they looked up to. What makes betrayal so damaging is that it doesn't just hurt emotionally, it confuses the INFJ's sense of reality. How did I not see this? How could I let that person in? These questions haunt them. Unlike other personality types, INFJs internalize betrayal. They don't lash out, they go inward. They retreat into themselves, trying to understand how the pain happened, how they missed the signs, and how they can make sure it never happens again. That need for understanding becomes part of their healing, but also part of their suffering. Betrayal doesn't just damage their trust in others, it also damages their trust in themselves. INFJs often feel ashamed for letting someone close. They replay conversations, relive moments, and dig through old memories looking for clues. They're not just heartbroken, they feel like they failed at protecting their own soul. Healing from this kind of trauma is hard. It's not quick, and it's not something anyone can rush. But the good news is INFJs do heal, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by working through the pain step by step. They heal quietly, deeply, and in their own way. This video is about those ways, not the surface-level tips, not forced positivity, but the real, grounded things INFJs do when they're trying to put the pieces back together after being betrayed. If you're an INFJ and you've been hurt deeply, this is for you. If you love an INFJ and you've seen them go quiet after betrayal, this is for you too. Understanding the way they heal can help you support them better. Or, if you are that INFJ, help you be more patient with yourself. Let's talk about what healing looks like for the INFJ when they've been hurt, broken, and betrayed, and how they find their way back home to themselves. Healing strategy number 1, embracing solitude for reflection. The first thing an INFJ usually does after betrayal is retreat, not to be dramatic and not to push people away, but to survive. INFJs need solitude to think, feel, and understand. After betrayal, that need becomes even stronger. It's not just about being alone. It's about rebuilding the safety that was taken away. For the INFJ, betrayal feels like the world is no longer safe. The place that once felt secure, the relationship, the friendship, the connection, has now become the source of pain. Their trust has been broken, and their nervous system is in defense mode. Solitude becomes a shelter, a place where no one can lie, hurt or disappoint them. During this time alone, the INFJ does what they do best. They reflect. They go back through every detail. They analyze every word. They try to find the moment things shifted. They ask themselves, what did I miss? And how could I not see this coming? This is part of their healing, but it's also emotionally heavy. Because in trying to understand the betrayal, they sometimes end up blaming themselves. They may go days, weeks, or even months in this reflective state. They won't talk to many people. They'll avoid social settings. They'll be polite but distant. This isn't coldness, it's protection. They don't want to let anyone else in until they understand what just happened. This phase can worry people who care about the INFJ. To them, it might look like the INFJ is shutting down. But really, they're building a foundation again. Alone time helps them figure out what they feel. And INFJs feel everything. The grief, the confusion, the anger, the guilt. They need space to feel all of it without outside pressure. This reflection also gives them clarity. It helps them separate what they felt from what actually happened. It helps them understand the dynamics of the relationship that led to the betrayal. It helps them stop idealizing the person who hurt them. Because INFJs often see the good in people first, and only later see the red flags they ignored. Solitude lets them process those red flags without shame. It gives them time to learn, to forgive themselves for not knowing better, and to prepare for the next step, healing not just from the betrayal, but from the self-doubt that follows it. This kind of solitude is not isolation. INFJs still crave connection, but they want that connection to feel real, honest, and safe. And until they feel strong enough to trust again, they need to reconnect with themselves first. Healing in solitude helps the INFJ become grounded again, in their own values, in their own voice, in their own inner truth. When betrayal takes away their emotional security, solitude helps them build it back, quietly, privately, and in their own time. Healing strategy number 2. Journaling to process emotions. After betrayal, INFJs often turn to one of their most powerful tools, writing. INFJs are natural reflectors. Their minds are always full of thoughts and emotions, and journaling helps them slow it all down. It gives them a space where they can be completely honest, without fear, without judgment, and without being misunderstood. Writing is private. It's safe. It doesn't talk back. It doesn't interrupt. For an INFJ who feels confused, hurt, or overwhelmed, a blank page becomes a place of relief, a place where their mind and heart can finally meet in the same room. After betrayal, emotions come in waves. 1 minute they're sad, the next they're angry, then numb, then hopeful, then disappointed all over again. Journaling helps INFJs map out those emotional shifts. It gives them a record of their healing, even when that healing feels slow. They might start by writing letters to the person who hurt them, letters they'll never send. These are not about revenge or drama. They're about release. INFJs don't always say what they need to say in the moment, but later, through journaling, they can say everything they held back, and in doing so, they let go of what they were holding in. They also use writing to ask questions. Why did this hurt me so much? What patterns do I see? What do I want to learn from this? These questions aren't easy, but INFJs are brave enough to ask them, because they want to understand, not just feel. As they write, they begin to notice connections, patterns in their relationships, habits in how they give or ignore red flags. Journaling becomes a mirror and sometimes a guide. It helps them see when they're blaming themselves too much, or when they're romanticizing someone who was actually toxic. It also helps them make peace with their own emotions. INFJs often judge themselves for feeling too much, but in writing, those feelings have a home. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be honest. Some INFJs use prompts, others free write. Some write every day. Others write only when the feelings get too heavy. There's no rule. The goal is expression, not performance, just truth. And over time, their journal becomes more than just a notebook. It becomes a witness, a quiet companion through the storm, a reminder that they are moving forward, even when it feels like they're standing still. Journaling doesn't erase betrayal, but it helps INFJs find meaning in it. And sometimes meaning is what makes the pain worth healing. Healing strategy number 3. Establishing firm boundaries. After betrayal, INFJs go through a deep internal shift. One of the most powerful outcomes of that shift is the creation of boundaries, something many INFJs struggle with before being hurt. Because they naturally want to help, to understand, to forgive, they often give people more access than they deserve. But betrayal changes that. It teaches the INFJ that not everyone deserves a seat at their emotional table. When trust is broken, the INFJ begins to see the gaps in their boundaries. They look back and realize they overlooked red flags. They made excuses. They said yes when they should have said no. They stayed silent when they should have spoken up. Betrayal brings all of this into sharp focus. This awareness doesn't come with blame. It comes with clarity. INFJs aren't trying to punish themselves. They're trying to protect themselves moving forward. So they start building boundaries. At first, it's emotional. They stop sharing personal details with people who haven't earned their trust. They stop explaining themselves to those who don't listen. They stop giving energy to those who only take. Then come the practical boundaries. Maybe they unfollow someone who hurt them. Maybe they change their routine to avoid certain situations. Maybe they say no to invitations that feel draining. These changes may seem small, but for an INFJ they're huge, because each no is really a yes to themselves. Boundaries don't come easy to the INFJ. They feel guilty at first. They worry they're being mean or selfish. But the more they practice, the more they realize how healthy boundaries are actually loving. Loving to others and loving to themselves. Through betrayal, INFJs also learn to trust their intuition again. They remember the feeling they had, the one that told them something was off, the one they ignored. Now, when that feeling shows up, they listen. That's a boundary too. believing your gut and acting on it instead of second-guessing it. Setting boundaries doesn't mean the INFJ shuts people out. It means they let the right people in. People who are honest, consistent, and kind. People who don't leave them guessing. People who respect the INFJ's sensitivity instead of using it against them. And when people push back, when they try to guilt trip or minimize or pressure, the INFJ stands firm. Because betrayal taught them what happens when they don't. This new strength isn't loud, it's steady, it's quiet confidence. And it shows up in how the INFJ moves through life. They become more protective of their time, their space, and their peace. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. In the end, betrayal doesn't just leave a scar. It leaves a lesson. And for the INFJ, one of the most important lessons is this: boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They're doors. Strong, steady doors that open only for those who truly deserve to come in. Healing strategy number 4. Seeking supportive connections. Even though INFJs often turn inward after betrayal, there comes a time when they need to feel connected again. But this time, they're more careful. They don't just reach out to anyone. They seek out people who feel safe, stable, and emotionally available. Support doesn't mean a large group of friends. For the INFJ, even one solid connection can make all the difference. It could be a trusted friend, a sibling, a therapist, or someone who has gone through something similar. What matters is that the connection feels genuine. No pretending, no walking on eggshells, just real honest support. INFJs don't want to explain their pain to someone who's going to dismiss it. They want to be heard, not fixed. They don't need lectures or advice unless they ask. What they need most is presence. Someone to sit with them in silence. Someone to listen when they finally open up. This kind of support helps rebuild trust, slowly. Because betrayal doesn't just destroy trust in others, it makes the INFJ question whether people can really be counted on. But when someone shows up consistently, with no agenda, that belief begins to change. Sometimes INFJs also find healing in support groups or online spaces where people share similar experiences. They may not speak much, but reading other people's stories helps them feel less alone. It reminds them that betrayal is painful, but it's also something they can grow through. Reaching out is hard for an INFJ. They don't want to be a burden. They don't want pity, but they do want to be seen. When they find someone who sees them fully and stays, that connection becomes a part of their healing. It reminds them that not everyone leaves, that some people truly care. And over time, that supportive bond helps the INFJ start to open up again. Not just to that one person, but to life itself. Healing strategy number 5. Engaging in creative expression. INFJs often carry their emotions in silence. They may not cry in front of others or speak openly about how deeply something has affected them, but their feelings have to go somewhere. And for many INFJs, that place is creative expression. Art, music, writing, dance, photography, even rearranging a room or decorating a space. All of these become tools for healing. When words aren't enough, or when the pain is too tangled to explain, creativity helps them untie the knots. After betrayal, INFJs might write poetry filled with emotion they don't share out loud. They might draw or paint images that reflect what they feel inside: confusion, sadness, strength, or even hope. They don't create to impress. They create to release. This expression gives them power. It turns pain into something beautiful, into something they can see, hold, and understand. It makes the invisible visible, and in doing so, it helps them process what's too overwhelming to speak directly. INFJs don't always think of themselves as artists, but when they allow themselves to create without judgment, they often surprise themselves. Their creative work becomes a map of their healing, a place where they can track their growth and honor their emotions. What makes this form of healing so important is that it's fully theirs. No one needs to approve it. No one needs to understand it. The act of creating is healing all by itself. Even if they never share their work, even if no one else ever sees it, the process gives the INFJ a way to move forward. A way to say, this hurt, but I'm still here, and this is my voice. Healing strategy number 6, practicing self-compassion and forgiveness. INFJs are hard on themselves. After betrayal, that self-judgment can grow louder. They start asking questions like, Why didn't I see it coming? Or how could I have been so naive? Even when they know they didn't deserve to be hurt, they blame themselves for allowing it. But true healing begins when the INFJ starts showing themselves the same compassion they give others. That means speaking to themselves kindly, gently, like they would speak to a close friend in pain. This isn't easy for the INFJ. They're used to being the caregiver, not the one receiving care, especially from themselves. They might think, if I had been stronger, I wouldn't have trusted them. Or, I should have known better. These thoughts only deepen the wound. What they need instead is truth, the reminder that trusting someone isn't a flaw, that being open-hearted is not a mistake, and that the betrayal says more about the other person than it ever did about them. Practicing self-compassion also means making space for emotions without shame. If they're angry, they let themselves feel that anger. If they're sad, they don't rush past it. If they're tired, they rest. They stop trying to push through or pretend everything is fine. They start treating their own heart with care. Forgiveness is part of this healing, but not in the way most people think. INFJs don't have to forgive the person who betrayed them right away, or ever. What they do need to forgive is their past self, the version of themselves that trusted, that hoped, that didn't know yet. That version wasn't weak. It was human, and it deserves grace. Over time, the INFJ starts rebuilding trust, not just in others, but in themselves. They learn to believe their intuition again. They learn to trust their voice. And slowly, they stop seeing themselves as broken and start seeing themselves as whole. Self-compassion doesn't erase the pain of betrayal, but it softens it. It creates space for peace. And it reminds the INFJ that healing isn't about pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's about choosing to keep loving themselves through it. Healing from betrayal trauma is one of the hardest things an INFJ will ever face. Not because they're weak, but because they feel so deeply. When someone they trusted turns out to be dishonest or harmful, it doesn't just hurt. It shakes their belief in people, in safety, and sometimes in themselves. But INFJs are strong in a way that isn't always visible. Their healing doesn't happen in loud declarations or quick changes. It happens quietly, slowly, in small choices, in silent reflections, in the way they sit with their pain and choose, over and over, not to let it harden them. They heal through solitude, by spending time in deep thought, by sitting in their own space, away from noise, where they can finally hear their own voice again. They use writing to express emotions too tangled to speak out loud. Their journal becomes a witness to their recovery. They learn how to set boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect their peace. They say no more often. They let fewer people into their inner world. But the people they do let in, they're chosen carefully. These are people who listen, who show up, who don't play games with trust. Support becomes important. INFJs reach out, not often, but intentionally. They find one or two safe people, maybe a therapist, maybe a friend who gets it, someone who can sit with their emotions without trying to fix them. That presence becomes part of their healing. Creativity plays its role too. Through art, music, or even quiet hobbies, INFJs find a way to move emotion through their body. Not everything needs to be explained with words. Some of the deepest healing comes from making something out of the pain, not to erase it, but to give it shape and release. And slowly, they turn toward self-compassion. They stop blaming themselves for being trusting. They forgive the version of themselves that didn't know better. They begin treating their heart with the gentleness they've always offered to others. Betrayal doesn't define the INFJ. It tests them, but it also teaches them. It shows them how to love themselves better, how to protect their peace, how to rebuild trust from the inside out. And in that healing, something powerful happens. They don't just come back to who they were before the pain. They become someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who still believes in love and honesty, but no longer sacrifices themselves to hold on to it.